You know who isn't strange and isn't kind of dumb? Ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome to the stage, to my first monitor, Bernie Sanderino. When trending for this one, love seeing the people get mad over this one.
Senator Sanders, Cornell West, who is a close ally of yours, he is running a third-party campaign for president. He recently criticized you for endorsing President Biden's reelection. Listen to what he said.
I love the brother, and you know, even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But
it's so incredible how every time I think the name Cornell West, I think of like, oh yeah, well, you know, he's made some mistakes, but this is like a respectable guy with a real shot at the presidency. And then I like the camera switches over to him, and he would melt in a presidential debate. I can't say it enough, guys. Activist and politician, two very different jobs. He can't be a politician. Absolutely not.
I think, again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump. People look at Biden, they don't really want to tell the full truth. He's created.
It's also not neo-fascism. I really don't like the term neo-fascism, because so the term neo-Nazi in my mind is just Nazi isn't like just an ideology. It refers to a specific political party. So when you say neo-Nazi, you mean literally a Nazi outside of the Nazi party, which all the current Nazis would be. But when you say like fascism is an ideology first, it's not a party. So saying neo-fascism implies that there's something distinct or different about Trump's fascism, and I strongly disagree. I think that like it's point by point, like by the book, like the same line that we've seen all over the place so many times.
Created the best economy that we can get. Is this the best that we can get? You're going to tell that lie to the people just for Biden to win?
Bernie never said that this is the best the economy can get. I don't know why he would say that.
What's your reaction to that?
Look at, dude, I relate to Bernie so much. Bernie has been such a pragmatic and intelligent advocate of left politics for his entire life. And he sees now, and I know for an absolute fact, he thinks exactly what I think. Holy shit, you guys have no idea what you're doing. That's what he's thinking. He's been doing this his entire life. He's so good at it. And all of these other, like, clowns are running around screeching about how, like, the time is now, Green Party, third party, let's go. And he's like, he has to, like, grin and bear it because he has to be, like, the unity guy, right? He can't go out there and be like, you know, okay, well, actually, yeah, I agree. And the only way to defeat fascism once and for all is to throw your vote away for, like, the glimmer of a chance of a 5% turnout for a candidate, which won't lead to anything, you know? Look at him.
Well, my reaction is that certainly is not the best economy that we can create. That was what my speech was about yesterday. We've got to join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all. We've got to cut the cost of prescription drugs in half. We've got to raise the minimum wage to at least $17 an hour. We've got to build the affordable housing we desperately need. But where I disagree with my good friend, Cornell West, is I think in these really very difficult times where there is a real question whether democracy is going to remain in the United States of America.
He's saying what I said to the Vanguard guys, right? Like, it's literally like, okay, like, I know we all want to have fun and LARP with our third party, even though we know for a fact it's mathematically impossible for it to change anything, and you're literally not accomplishing anything. I know you want to, like, LARP as a not liberal by beating the party duopoly. Nothing is more leftist than getting nothing done, you know? But we really need to preserve the democracy for this to be possible. I'm trying to be a little bit more, like, conciliatory and bring people on board with this one, but, like, yeah, I don't know. Always remember that for all of the things people hate me for, I lost by far the most support and the most, like, cred with other lefties when I supported Biden after Bernie dropped out of the 2020 primaries. The most hate that I got was not for any of the controversy, any of the arguments, disagreements, individual, whatever. It was that really more than with the PF thing. Yes, the PF thing, everyone already hated me by then because of the Bernie or bust thing. Yeah. The first emotional priority of most Western leftists is to prove they're not liberals, and they will do anything to get that. They will sink the country if it gets them that. They will whine and complain. The fact that the term voter shaming is used unironically by people, like there's something wrong with making moral judgments about other people's voting decisions, is hilarious. It's the whiny, like, if you don't think voter shaming is that, you might as well say like, oh, you're action shaming. Why are you action shaming? I want to be able to do actions, but you're shaming the actions that I take. Like, it's insane, you know? But lefties are really whiny, and they know they can't morally justify their decisions, so they have to run back to this like, well, when else are we going to do something, you know?
America, you know, Donald Trump is not somebody who believes in democracy, whether women are going to be able to continue to control their own bodies, whether we have social justice in America, we end bigotry. Around that, I think we have got to bring the entire progressive community to defeat Trump or whoever the Republican nominee will be, support Biden, but at the same time, which is what I did yesterday, is demand that the Democratic Party, not just Biden, have the guts to take on corporate greed and the massive levels of income and wealth inequality that we see today.
People, believe it or not, as well phrased and as
just look.
sorry, as well phrased and as like perfectly unconfrontational as that statement was, people still got angry with him over it. Because again, the people who get angry over statements like this aren't real leftists. They're either like hardline centrists, or they're the type of lefties who think that leftism is when you agree with literally everything the Russian like State Department says. You know, it's when your understanding of American politics is literally just like, how do I virtue signal as the most lefty ever? I saw a lefty bitching about how they wasted so much money on Bernie. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I genuinely think that you can get a lot more done with regards to pushing progressive socialism, appealing to liberals, than you can by working with communists. Because as it's like, I'm sorry, the majority of communists, at least the ones that I've seen online, are politically like illiterate. They don't know anything. It's like their understanding of their own ideology is like comparable to that of a person whose politics are based around opposing their parents. They have a loose, tenuous understanding that the American narrative in the Soviet Union and on like the Vietnam and Korean Wars aren't like that accurate, which is true. And they know that America's done a lot of bad stuff that wasn't taught in the history books, which is somewhat true. A lot of it does get taught in the history books. They just didn't pay attention in class because they're mediocre and have spent their entire lives underperforming, even if they are intelligent. And a lot of them are very emotionally attached to their identity of being like an oppositional force. And as a product of this, like, they are politically worthless and even counterproductive. I mean, you see this all over the place. Whereas there are a lot of liberals who can pretty easily be bought over onto the idea of like a proletarian state if you phrase it the right way. They're a lot more politically effective and useful because it seems like a lot of their ideology is motivated by empiricism, or at the very least you can have a conversation with them. But dog, every time I try to have a conversation with a lefty, it's like I'm talking with a brick wall, man. It's so frustrating. I imagine it must be more frustrating for Bernie Sanders, because unlike me, Bernie Sanders can't spend his entire career arguing with these people. He has to be like the unity ticket for lefties. Bernie understands many things the rest of the left does not understand, Robo Cartman. Brianna Joy Gray lashing out against Bernie. Well, Brianna Joy Gray is a perfect example of who I'm talking about. Political illiteracy. He was smart enough to dodge Occupy Wall Street. I wasn't even like politically aware back when that happened, so I don't really know much of the stuff on the ground. But in retrospect, Occupy Wall Street has been nothing but a waste of time, right? Like, most of the people associated with it have just gone on to be, like, centrist populists, who are worthless, or reactionaries. You gotta have central organization. What happens to us after Bernie dies? I take Bernie's spot. I'll be the senator. Thank you. I think that your average Democrat, and by average, I mean, like, average, like, perfectly average, Democrat is probably more progressive in terms of immediate, like, political, empirical impact than your average communist, you know? Because a lot of people have an image of, like, the communist as the person, or, like, the anarchist or whatever. Like, they go to their local... I don't want to besmirch anarchists, though, because even though anarchists say and do a lot of dumb shit, the really cool thing about anarchists is, unlike a lot of people who call themselves communists, they're not fascists. If a person calls themselves an anarchist online, there's a high likelihood that they're an annoying, like, 16-year-old... like, transgender, anxiety-ridden dipshit who doesn't know anything about anything, but they're not a fascist, which is a huge plus. Whereas if you see, like, a person who calls themselves a communist online, there is legitimately, like, a 40% chance that if North Korea announced they'd be executing all gay citizens, they would defend it as a radical act of, like, anti-Western bourgeois socialization or whatever. Yeah, anarchists are cringe, but they are free. Come on, Vosh, 40% really? Sphinxy, you have no idea how negative my impression of people online who call themselves communists are. Not, mind you, communism, or communists, like actual communists. I have a high impression of both those things. But people who call themselves communists online, it's kind of like how when you see anti-imperialist in somebody's Twitter bio, they are like 100% of the time defending Russia's war in Ukraine. You know, like, that's not anti-imperialist, you goober, you goofy goober. What are you doing? It's because these terms are used as signifiers and their meanings have become corrupted. But like the underlying ideas, you know, obviously anti-imperialism is good. That's why I support Ukraine against Russia. Kind of like people who say they're pacifist, lol. Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of people who will say they're pacifist, or you'll have all those people who are like, we just want to end war, and like, they're saying this to try to convince people to not defend themselves against a Russian invasion, you know? Vosh, well, I get that online lefties are louder than most. I think this applies to all online political groups of seeing annoying proud liberals. Of course there are annoying liberals, but again, I need you to understand, when I see a liberal on Twitter, 99% of the time, they're just a regular American dumbass. When I see somebody who calls themselves a communist on Twitter, there is a legitimately about coin flip of a chance that they are actually a fascist, like a real, honest to God, Stalin did nothing wrong fascist. Like, so I don't think it's really comparable. And there are only, a couple 100,000 people in this country who would call themselves a communist, maybe a million or two at most if you really pressed people for it, whereas there are hundreds of millions of liberals. You know, it's a much more valuable demographic to try to shift people over. Your view of people on Twitter is not reflective of how communists are IRL in the USA. Sphinxy, you fool. You think there are communists in real life in the USA? They're all on Twitter. What are you talking about? If you want an impression of liberals, you have to go out in the streets. If you want an impression of communists, however, yeah, you go on Twitter, because that is where all of them are. Look, I've been to the swap meets, I've been to the, the fundraisers, I've been to the food drives, I've been to the distribution centers, and you know who actually goes out there and organizes? Anarchists. Every city in the USA. Go to your local events. Go see who's helping the homeless. Go see who's distributing clothes and food. Anarchists. Every single time. Every single time. If you want to get a good impression of anarchists, go to literally any local gathering. It's them. The communists are not there. The people who call themselves communists are online talking about how they are the reincarnation of Stalin because they will not vote for Biden, okay? I don't even see communists talk about, like unionizing. Because it's all about like this doomerism. There's nothing incremental that can be done, so all we can do is wait for the collapse. It's like Chapo shit. No respect. Vosh, this actually makes me want to look up local food drives and distribution-related things so I can vote. Yeah, do it. Seriously, over in Seattle, which is packed full of anarchists, you can go to Cap Hill and find a bunch of like posters that are stapled to the, the signposts or whatever, and it's like, oh, here there's a thing, here there's a thing. There's a reason Chaz happened here. As stupid of an idea as that was, it indicates some level of local organizing ability. That's not true, Vosh. I know plenty of liberals that do a lot of work on the ground too. Oh, no. To be clear, when I say it's all anarchists, what I mean is in leftist meets, it's anarchists, not communists. Liberals do stuff like that, though proportionally speaking, like, it's anarchists blow everyone out of the water. There is no political group that is as involved in direct action as anarchists because direct action is their middle name. They are the ones most likely, like, proportional to their presence in the population. Yeah, percentage-wise. Well, sure, ASA777. It varies a lot around the world. Anarchism has been losing the fight since the Industrial Revolution, but they still stand. I think that, as is the case with socialists historically, I think that it's better thought of their contributions more as their influence on existing policy and action, more so than anything else. How much work have anarchists done in like a direct sense, like in terms of how much they've controlled and enacted? Well, that's not really the anarchists' game, right? But they've been the, center for so much advocacy that has been more effective and incremental. It's kind of like how 99.9% of the good stuff that's happened to queer people in this country has been changes in laws and culture and not about like direct rioting, but Stonewall started Pride, So you wouldn't say, oh yeah, throwing bricks at cops is what earned all queer people their rights, because it didn't. That's very reductive and wrong. It's wrong. But you could say that people willing to throw bricks at cops were, from the beginning, an integral part in being a catalyst for all of the good things that have happened to queer people. And that would be an accurate take and would be correct. And I've been fighting against this the entire time that I've been streaming. You know, the idea of the left being like this ineffective wannabe LARP social group is one of the main things that I've challenged it on, you know. That's often true, yes. Some of the most active local militia groups against Russia's invasion in Ukraine have been anarchists. You know, people don't talk about that because the right has put so much emphasis on promoting the Azov battalion narrative, which, considering Azov got shredded in Mariupol like months ago, you know, I feel like things have been pretty quiet with them, but still, that's all anyone says. The Ukraine Nazis. Whereas some of the most active militia groups over there are anarchists, but they don't get, you know, they don't get the attention. Why do MLs hate anarchists so much? Because MLs are fascists and revisionists.